Jess.
Hey, Kit.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 7 of Queer Consciousness. For everyone, it's not me by myself anymore.
Yay. I think that's great. I mean, you're not by yourself ever.
Correct. This is fair. I'm never by myself. I always have a guest. I'm always talking to somebody else, except it's me being the single common denominator. And now I am no longer the single common denominator. We have a double denominator.
Mm.
Honestly, don't mind us. This is what we are. This is what we do.
I feel like we've been teasing this all of season 6, though.
We have. We really have.
You talked about me more. I mean, like, I was definitely involved in like the production side as opposed to just the editing side of things. And I came and I guested and did recaps and all of that. So
it was a little sprinkling, a little teasing. And so to start off season 7, I wanted to have this conversation. Well, not just me. We wanted to have this conversation because we wanted to introduce our season 7 going forward.
Your emails that we send to guests.
Yeah, you did. I know, it's off.
Because you know, you're so used to saying I.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna edit this. This wasn't intentional. We. I say we even when I don't mean we because I'm so used to we.
Yeah.
Being like in a relationship and having been in a relationship a good portion of my life. And then also representing a business of people.
Yeah.
You know, in a lot of the businesses and the nonprofits that I've helped be a part of. So it's a funny thing to say I.
And whereas me, I'm so used to, because for the longest time it was just me. I was the only one who was doing everything. So like when you came on to be the producer, like you were doing literally all of the back end stuff, but I was still doing all of the front end stuff. So I was still scheduling all of our guests and reaching out and emailing people and answering emails and doing all the correspondence and all of that stuff.
And that shared balance is really important when it comes to
it really is.
Podcast anyway.
For sure. For sure. We wanted to introduce season 7 because of the topic specifically, the individual through line that is going to be the theme for season 7. And we wanted to do it in a way where our listeners understand where I'm coming from in my own journey, where Jess is coming from in their journey, and why we decided together to take the direction the podcast is going this way, how we wanted to shift and why we wanted to shift it. Because going forward, all episodes for season 7, Jess and I are going to be co-hosting them. So it's going to be the both of us talking to our guests together. It's not just going to be me or just going to be Jess.
Right. And I think where previously you had invited me on to kind of fill a gap of sorts that you were trying to, you know, that maybe you felt like you might not ask the questions or, you know, draw the person out in the way that you wanted to hear the details of that person. And then obviously to do recaps and get my opinion on the stuff that I'd edited. And so I think that this season, there's an element to that because of how we're shifting the theme. I know we're teasing you guys so much. That's actually part of it. Anyway, that's just a clue, y'all. But this, the way in which we're changing our theme, it's also to kind of bring me in and help to kind of bring out something in our guests that might be filling a little bit of that gap that I think Kit is hoping to fill, and they'll talk about that more in a little bit. But that I'm also hoping to kind of, you know, sit back a little bit more because I know sometimes when those guests have come on and I've been there, you sat back and you know, just listened, and I think that will happen at times. But I'm hoping that it'll be a more equal, mutual, you know, hosting.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Especially because, and I remember the day I had the idea for the theme for season 7, I immediately texted you and was like, hey, what do you think about this? And you were an immediate yes. because of the fact that, one, it's right in your wheelhouse. It's something that you are very passionate about. And for me, one of the questions that you had, because I could tell that you were an immediate yes with a caveat. And that caveat was, are you, just asking me, am I going to be comfortable talking about this subject at length? Not just at length, but also at depth.
Yes.
And because it's like, it's one thing for me, I'm used to having deep intellectual conversations. Like that's been the theme of the podcast literally since the beginning, to get really vulnerable, to have heart-led conversations, to open up about how we're feeling, our lived experiences as queer people in the world. The thing that nobody had talked about up until this point, and I have really not heard a ton of people talk about it, even in other queer spaces, at least not the way that I want us to talk about it. And I was like, this is going to be filling a space that hasn't been filled yet. So, listener, season 7.
I was gonna say, are we gonna stop teasing now?
Yes, we are. We are finally going to culminate everything.
I'm a big tease, and I enjoy a big tease. So.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. We've been edging it for a while, so
let's stop edging. Let's let him in.
So for season 7, we are going to be talking about sex.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
Let's talk about you and me. It's gonna be great. And the reason why, and this is where the caveat comes in of when Jess was asking me if I'm going to be okay with talking about this at length and depth, is because of the fact that sex is one of those topics. And by those topics, you know what I mean. It's a topic that everybody knows about, but absolutely nobody wants to touch it. Or if they do, they skirt around it, they use euphemisms, they kind of talk about it behind their hands. It's one of those.
And even people who would consider themselves sex positive, have certain subjects that they say, right. Oh no, we will talk about that in this space, but we will not talk about it in this space.
Right.
This space is a no-no when it comes to that conversation.
Right. It's very
and
much.
Everyone feels different about different types of topics under sex.
And that's why we're using the umbrella term of sex. And funnily enough, we've already recorded one of our conversations with, we brought Dr. Jolie Hamilton back. And that
Of course we did.
Of course we did. We had to. And at one point, like probably halfway through the conversation, we were talking about sex, and Jess was like, I'm surprised we haven't talked about queer sex. And I was like, Jess, hold on. Hold on. Anytime queer people talk about sex, it's automatically queer sex.
You're absolutely right.
We don't have to add the justification or the descriptor, like the adjective or the verb of queer before sex, because as queer people, how we experience sex is very queer because of who we are.
Yep.
And for me, we're just going to go ahead and get started, because the question that we are going to start.
Let's get started.
Get started. The question that we're going to start every conversation with is going to be very similar to the same line that we have been with all of the other conversations that we have had. But instead of the question being, what does being queer mean to you? It is, what does sex mean to you?
Yep.
Because that is, you can take that any which way you want.
The majority of our guests, like always, like 98% of our guests, I don't remember if I think we've had one guest in the last couple seasons that wasn't queer, but was an incredible advocate and ally to our community.
The only person that I distinctly remember not legitimately being in the queer community specifically was Derek Webb.
Yes. And that was a good exception. And I think, because all of our guests are queer, we can ask the question, just what is sex to you? Yeah. What does sex mean to you is such a big question. And when you really, really wrap your head around it, you will get an absolutely different answer from everyone. And actually, the beautiful thing that I love about our original question for the last however many seasons
Mm-hmm.
of what does being queer mean to you is that you get a different answer by the end of the conversation. It's
Yep.
not always the answer that you start with,
Right.
you know, because you start to kind of extrapolate and listen and lean in a little bit more and go, yeah, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe sex isn't just this,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Maybe being queer is more
Yep.
than this, you know? And so that's what I'm really looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to having those conversations. And I feel like every time you and I have had the conversation, it's been a different answer too. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts. One thing I wanted to share about that original text when you sent it was that it was during a time in my life where I didn't know if I could have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I normally am very comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with that conversation. But there were some things going on in my life that were just challenging. And I'll share more about that when I answer the question, what is sex? Um, but because of that, I said, I'm glad that you're such a forward thinker because I couldn't do this like tomorrow
Yeah.
or
No.
next month, you know? But being able to anticipate it and prepare and know that I wanted to be at a certain place in my own growth by the time we started recording this actually was just a really beautiful practice for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah, because
So
I asked you if you wanted to do this topic for season 7, probably a month or probably a month and a half into season 6. So it was probably back in like September.
it was actually in like May.
Was it really? Was it that far back?
Yeah, I'm going to look through my text while you're talking
Okay, you do
because
that because I don't remember. I thought for sure it was like in the middle of summer or like at
uh,
the end of summer.
it was like if it was somewhere between May and July. It wasn't past July
Okay, so it must have been.
because I remember it was a conversation we had before my mom passed, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. So
Um,
yeah, okay. So it must have been during the like hiatus between season 5 and season
yes,
6
that's
because I
right.
had already had season 6 in my head and I was like, okay, I know what season 6 looks like. What does season 7 look like? Because I was trying to I don't necessarily say want to get ahead, but at the same time I was also having the same mindset with you of be like, if this is the conversation that we are going to be having, I personally, as one of the hosts, needs to be in a certain mindset and a certain frame where I can have this conversation and I'm going to be okay getting real fast.
Okay, let's start with you, Kit.
Okay.
What does sex mean to you?
Mm.
Do you like how I mimicked your
Yes, yes, I
timing?
loved it. It's great. It's so great. I like it when things get like when the turns have tabled against me and it makes me laugh because there's so many times where I'm not used to being on the other end. And so when I
Yeah.
hear it back, I'm like, yeah, okay, all right, here we go. Uh, so sex to me, and this is something that I have really started to unpack uh, right around the time I figured out that I was on the ace spectrum. Like when I figured out that I was on the asexuality spectrum, I was like, oh, that's why sex never like it's not the go-to for me. Like it's not the thing. It's always the cherry on top. If we get the cherry, that's great. But I'm perfectly happy with only having whipped cream on top of my cake.
That's all I want. I don't even want the cherry, but I do want the cherry. Anyway, that's
Yes.
not the point.
So it took me a little bit to figure out why I never craved the cherry or why I didn't want the cherry first. It
Yeah.
was always like I would pick the cherry off and I would set it to the side, and majority of the time I would forget that the cherry was an option because I was more concerned about the other things of the cake. I was more concerned about tasting all of the individual layers and the whipped cream and the icing and just getting all of that. And then I would be like,
Okay, stop. Am I going to get turned on a lot by cake? Like, is this normal?
You know me and my analogies. I have to paint a picture.
It's true. You're painting a picture, but I'm also trying to hold on to the fact that it's about sex
Yeah,
and not
we'll get
about
there.
sex.
Right, yes, which is why we will get there. And so as I started to figure out that it was like, I'm perfectly happy in relationship, whether or not it's a platonic relationship or a romantic relationship. I am perfectly happy in relationship, having emotional intimacy, having mental intimacy, having spiritual intimacy, and having physical intimacy to a point. Where there are some people who get very disappointed when they've been dating someone for a month or 6 weeks or 2 months and they haven't had like physical intercourse yet. For me, I'm like, we can hold hands, we can cuddle, we can make out on the couch, and I am perfectly happy with that. That is a level of physical intimacy that I am perfectly happy with. If we both agree that we do want to see each other naked and we do want to do the horizontal hokey pokey, then yes, absolutely, I will go there. I'm totally fine with that. But if we only feel comfortable, like maybe getting to second base, doing a little bit over the shirt stuff, okay, I'm not going to say no to that either, because that's also nice. But I'm not going to be so focused on the cherry that I forget that there's also the cake.
Oh, yeah. It's such an asexual analogy also. Like, that is not an analogy that would be used by someone who is normal sexual or hypersexual, you know, or whatever other terms there are.
Right.
You know, like that is an asexual way of doing an analogy around sex. And I love that.
Yeah. And it took me a really long time to figure out that I was on the ace spectrum because, and this is a conversation that you and I have actually had offline multiple times, where it took me a little bit, but I realized that if I was very attracted to somebody physically, that for me personally is a red flag. Like if I'm first and foremost and mostly attracted to them physically, where I'm like, oh, I would, yes.
Yep.
Immediately, yes.
Well, probably mostly, I think we've talked a little bit about this. Like, it might be because, you know, you're not late in life, because I think most late in life queers would consider themselves like late 30s, 40s, but kind of right there in the center. Like you took some time figuring out your queerness, which you've talked in length about at different times. But I think because of that, there's a little bit of a younger feeling to you. Which means that first passionate, lustful experience, you don't know how to talk to yourself about it yet. You don't know how to like control yourself yet. So it's like, it doesn't mean that person is a red flag.
Right.
It just means that you're red flagging that experience for yourself. Like, and I think that that's an important distinction, because I think someone could hear you say, if I'm just physically attracted to you, then that's a red flag. That's not about the person. That's about you and your own experience with yourself, and knowing that, oh, it doesn't mean I can't pursue you, but it means I need to figure me out in regards to this.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's one of those things where I tend, if this happens, and it's happened a few times, where I have been very attracted to somebody and I have pursued that, and then I have started to get to know who this person is, and I'm like, oh, I only liked you because I was physically attracted to you.
Yep.
And when I started to legitimately try and talk to you or try and have some sort of emotional connection or some sort of mental connection, and I would make those bids where I would talk to you about something, it might be something like fairly shallow, but it was definitely a bid for emotional connection. Or it would be like, yeah, I was listening to this podcast and they're like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. And they were talking about quantum mechanics and quantum physics and how that relates to like the intersectionality of spirituality and science and that whole thing. And it would just be an immediate, like, eyes glazed over, everything went right over their head. And I'm like, That's one of the more tame things that I listen to and think about on a daily basis. And
Yep.
I literally, you just went, nope. And I was like, huh, okay. All right. But that was a thing that I needed to figure out. And so that's how I understand where it's like, oh, I don't need someone to fill me.
Oh my God. Our 14-year-old boys are just going to come out
So
now that we're
so hard.
so hard now that we're
Oh, it's
talking
so
about
great.
sex primarily. We're just going to have to let ourselves go.
Yep. That's why I was like, I'm just going to keep going with it. Anyway,
Yep.
I don't need I have finally realized that while yes, physical intimacy with your committed partnership person is definitely something that solidifies your relationship in a lot of ways. And it is definitely something that you can use to maintain that connection. But it can't be the only thing that you use to maintain the connection.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
That's why I kind of like I've figured out that that's my last resort, not my first option. Where it's like we definitely get to like we understand each other on a mental level. We understand each other on an emotional level. We understand each other on like a spiritual level. We get that we can be physical with each other, but it's not a necessity. It's a good thing to do, where it's one of those things where it's like, you know what we haven't done in a really long time? We haven't had sex. Because you do need that just as a human, because you can't not. Like it's also scientifically proven that it's not good for you to not
have intimacy or have sex.
Well, not intimacy, but like legitimately, like, and this is something that also being autistic, your brain's like, my brain specifically gets locked up on certain things, and then I'm like, no, I have to learn more. And so it's like, you'll hear something, like I'll watch a TikTok or I'll hear something on a podcast where somebody will be like, it's not like you have to masturbate, like you have to have orgasms because your body needs it as a sexual being. Like you need to do these things to have good sexual health. Like that's just healthy.
I would say that there are probably some people out there that are like the ACE spectrum. That umbrella is a big umbrella.
It's a very big umbrella.
There, your conversation with Christina Van Epps was like, to me, I felt like it was clear she was more ACE on that, like, more linear spectrum. Whereas there's you, and then, excuse me, my wife Erica is like over here in this like gray ACE kind of world. And then I've met other people who say like, yeah, I've always wondered if I was ACE. I still have sex this amount of times, like a month, but I don't know that it's necessary. So like this experience of like, of desire, I think, right? Like, how much am I desiring this?
Yeah.
Versus repelling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like, I almost wonder if that's the spectrum of asexuality, is like a desire to, there's like a middle ground where it's like, I could take it or leave it. You're kind of right down the center. Surprising.
Yep.
Non-binary Kit being right down the center. And then there's like on the side of repel versus the side of desire.
Right. Yeah. Like the attraction versus the repelling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that umbrella, this is why video is going to be important. Once we start putting out, we're just for our audio listeners, we didn't mention it, but we will have video episodes that I think will be accessible through our Patreon. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Kit? But I'm kind of drawing an umbrella of sorts and like showing a middle line and saying like on one side there's this and one side there's the other. So yeah, when I think about that, and even like the several friends and family members that I know that are on that ACE spectrum, is very much, very, very, very much a spectrum.
Yeah.
Because I've known some friends who like fully are like, Nope. I have no desire to touch myself. I have no desire for anyone else to touch me. And then I've known people who that's where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that, sometimes comes from trauma. I'm sure there's some of you that are thinking that. Um, and I'm looking forward to talking to even more people like Dr. Jolie, uh, who are, clinically uh, just specialized in these fields.
Yep.
But there's definitely, you know, sometimes there's a trauma base from that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a purity culture trauma base,
Yeah.
and how that affects us. I think more times than not. But sometimes that's just the way we were born. That's just the way that we feel. But I think when there's a little bit of a trauma impact, when we start to have a healing experience with a partner and we feel like we get to fully decide and consent when we want to, that can shift too.
Mm-hmm.
Just like anything else in our lives can shift. I think that's part of what I like about being as an example, as a similar parallel example, is one of the things I like about being genderqueer or non-binary is that there's a little more flexibility for me to kind of express myself differently at different times. And that does come out in my sexual experience, which I shared a little bit about during our Dr. Jolie episode. So, it's really cool to be able to have that term because I think about all the people, man, before asexuality was even really a term.
Yeah.
All the people that kind of were either in partnerships where they had high expectation of return, um, or in partnerships with someone who did not have a desire at all
Yeah.
and thought there was something wrong with them
Yeah.
and just did not felt felt lonely in both of those experiences, I'm guessing. Because I'm not guessing, I've been there.
Yeah.
And having the term asexuality as a part of that is really, really, really helpful to understand that it has nothing to do with something you're doing right or wrong. It's just more to talk about.
Yeah. Well, and that was also the thing that I kind of had to figure out for myself was looking back at relationships that I had had and how I approach relationships now, where it's I mean, yeah, sex is great, but legitimately, have you ever had a conversation where your head, your mind is absolutely blown open and your heart is just shattered wide open because this person is legitimately holding aspects of you that have never been held before? And it's not in a physical way. It's not like you just had a literal, mind-blowing orgasm to the point where you're seeing stars because of how hard the muscle spasms and the chemicals hit. You can have that same type of feeling in a non-physical way.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%. You can also have that feeling of emotion and being held while also having that
Yeah,
physical experience,
exactly. They're not
you know?
mutually exclusive.
No. And I know, I think a lot of folks, especially I would say this is the gift of queerness to straight folks is to be able to kind of have conversations around depth of intimacy
Mhm.
because of hookup culture. Hookup
Yes.
culture has made it so that, you know, sex is more readily available, physical intimacy is there, and yet there is no emotional intimacy.
Right.
And uh people are realizing that that's what they were craving, you
Yes.
know? And I think some people get stuck in a rut
Mhm.
of well, this is where I get my emotional intimacy and this is where I get my physical intimacy. And I don't know how to merge those worlds,
Right. Right.
you know, which is a whole entirely different, not a different conversation, but is a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. So to officially answer the question of what does sex mean to me, sex to me is, I don't want to say the penultimate thing, but also at the same time, it is definitely the thing that I absolutely have to take time to build up towards with somebody else. It's not something that I can just walk into a situation and be like, hit it and quit it and that be the end of it. Like that is, I've never been that way. Like even when I was supposedly straight, had never been that way. And it has just basically been more and more solidified as I have very much so started to understand my own queerness and understand my own non-binariness. And for me, and that's where the demisexual comes in, where it's like, because I am demi-ace, it's like I have to have that emotional connection with someone. And if we either don't have sex or never have sex, that's also okay too. I'm perfectly content having an emotional, mental connection with you outside of that quote unquote necessity to have sex. So it's like, if you're not feeling it, I'm not feeling it, and I'm not going to pressure you about it, and it's going to be okay.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about your sexual history?
Sure.
I'm curious to know, because even as your friend, as your close friend, we had a conversation recently and you mentioned the fact that you had been previously engaged to a man. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And we need to talk about this
I forgot
because
about that.
you had also said that you had sex outside of, like, you weren't golden, you weren't a golden star. Um, and so I was like, okay, I need to know more. So however much you're willing to share, I think it would be interesting for the listeners, because even as your close friend, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
So for the listeners to know a little bit more about your history, if you're willing to share.
Yeah. So back when I was straight, I was engaged to a man for, I think it was 9 months. I honestly don't remember because that was back in 2013. Yes, 2013. We got engaged in 2012. The relationship ended in 2013. Yeah, that was a whole ass minute ago. That was a literal lifetime ago. And he was actually the one that I lost. Cool, like, we can debate whether or not virginity is a thing.
Yeah,
But
virginity is a concept.
Virginity is a concept, but
Yeah.
for the sake of this story, he was the one that I lost my virginity to.
Yep.
And it wasn't one of those things where like we rushed into it. We had been dating for, I think, like just over a year at that point. So like it wasn't a new thing. It was definitely something that like we had talked about leading up to the time, like the first time we had sex. So it wasn't like one of those things where it was just there was conversation, there was consent. Like for my first time in terms of like those experience that I had, it was a good experience because of the fact that like the man that I was with was very respectful. He was very consenting. We both had everything was laid out on the table. Like I knew his entire history. He obviously knew mine. And it was probably one of the best first encounters you could possibly ask for in terms of like how we approached the situation, where it was like, okay, this is what we're doing. You tell me if it's too much and we will stop. Like, if you don't like this, you say something and we will stop. Don't just like, if you don't like it, tell me.
Yeah.
And that was something that he reiterated multiple times.
That's
and
good
so,
to hear.
right, it was great. And so, like, especially because you can hear horror stories from other people. But for my first experience having this particular individual who legitimately deeply cared for me, not only as a person, not only as a female presenting person who has never been sexually like experienced up until that point, like could not have gone better, could not have been a better guy to have sex with for the first time.
Yeah.
And so like obviously that relationship ended, but even after,
not obviously from the point of view of us 13 years later.
right.
But I'm curious, like, for you at any point during that sex or that sexual encounter, were you questioning like anything about your own sexual desire in that moment, or because you were, you know, at least wanting an orgasm or wanting some sort of like release of that regard.
Yeah.
That you were like, oh, this is just what sex is. Like, had there been a moment yet where you were starting to question?
Not really, because up until like that's when I was still very much so like steeped in purity culture. I wasn't like in a church at the time, but it was definitely one of those things where it was like, oh, you two are in a very committed relationship. Like you are definitely headed the marriage route if this relationship keeps going. So like you're basically like you're together. Like this is not something that it's like a one and done type situation. Like no, you guys have been in a committed relationship. This is something that you have both wanted. This is a good thing. So while yes, there
You're
were
doing the autistic formula thing.
yes,
Like this is the formula we follow.
right, exactly. So even though it was going against my entire upbringing of purity culture, you have to wait until after you're married to have sex for the first time. I was like, I at the time thought I loved this man. I thought I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. I knew that we were both in a committed partnership. I knew that this was something that we both wanted. We had both talked about it. There was a lot of communication around it. Next logical step, legitimately get naked and have sex.
Yeah, it's so autistic of you though. It's so it really
Very.
is. Because it's like, even though it went against your entire faith system, it made sense in your logical brain.
Correct.
And you prioritized your logical brain, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah. So it was
but because you were living in logic, you
Yes.
weren't connected to your emotion
No.
in the same way. And so you were like, yeah, well, this is what the formula tells me works. It seems to be working. I care about this man deeply. Because that's the thing that like, for those folks that have experienced, like maybe they're bi, maybe they're pan, maybe they're, again, the spectrum of attraction. So often it's like that confusion of like, but I care for this person so deeply. How can I not love them? And then you add in gender questioning, and then you add in asexuality. It makes sense that it took so long for you, Kit, to get to the point where you finally were like, asexuality. Oh, that makes so much sense. Imagine if back then you could have understood the concept of asexuality, if that would have made sense to you at that time yet,
I don't think it would have, just because of the fact that I was still trying to be the quote unquote good girl. Like I was
Oh, that's a good
trying
point. Yeah.
to be this version of me that was living up to all of the expectations that people have around people who identify as cis women.
Yeah.
And so even if you had approached me with, hey, you might be ace, because while, yeah, sex was good, like we had a fun time together. We both like got off, like it wasn't a bad time. It wasn't like a bad time, but it was just like, there was never a time where I was like, that was fun. Let's do it again. It was like, boxes checked. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I am now done. It's not thank you, sir.
I relate to that.
Right. It's like, it was literally a one and done. It was like, I got off, you got off, good night, sir, type situation. So it was never anything where it was like, oh, that was a lot of fun. Like, let's take like a 5-minute break and just keep going. And I was like, nope, one and done. And it, like, I had one more encounter. Well, it was 2 encounters with the same guy. A little late, like very shortly after I had broken up with my ex-fiance. And again, I was very much so performing sex.
Yes, performing sex. Yeah.
It's not necessarily that I wanted it, but it was one of those things where like me and this guy, we had been flirting forever.
This is what you do to further connection.
Right. Exactly. And so it was, for me now looking back, it was very performative. And then I was like, okay. Then I moved away, and so never saw any of them again. And that's kind of where the possibility of me being queer started to very tinily like perk up in my head.
Yeah.
Because where I moved to, because I was living in Platteville, moved to Madison. And then I moved from one side of the city to the other. So I was far enough away because my ex was still in town at the time. But I was far enough away where I knew I wasn't going to run into him because we just ran in two completely different sides of the city. And then I joined a rugby team.
Well, that's gay of you.
Yeah. Well, I joined a rugby team in college, and you would have
That was
thought
gay
that
of you.
Yes, yes. Look, it's what it like. So there's so many moments in my life where I'm like, how the hell did you not know? And it's like because I had no knowledge. You can't
It's
know
so
what you
funny.
don't know. And so I joined the rugby team in Madison, and obviously being around some of the gayest people in the city because the yes, we had straight people on our team, but they were the exception, not the rule. The straights were the exception. The queers were the rule.
So you were the exception, quote unquote.
Right. Yes. Because I thought for sure I was straight, which is hilarious because just about everybody on my team looked at me and went, yeah, okay.
Gay.
Yeah, okay. But like after that, I like had pretty much stopped looking for any type of relationship, mainly because like anybody was like, oh, are you dating any, like asking the questions. Yeah, I'm in my early 20s, early to mid 20s at that point. I hadn't quite hit 25. So I'm like, everyone's looking at me like, oh, you're single. Like, are you looking for anybody? And I was like, no, I just got out of a very long, very toxic relationship. Like I need time. So I use that as my excuse for not getting into relationships with
The very
anybody moving
long.
forward.
You're considering a couple of years?
Let's put it this way. From my ex-fiance to the next person I dated who was also a man, that timeline where I was quote unquote taking time to heal, that was 8 years.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from one like long-term relationship to another long-term relationship, there was an 8-year gap in my resume of dating where I wasn't seeing anybody, I wasn't looking for anybody, nothing.
Ace.
And so
Ace and gay.
Ace and gay, yeah, exactly. And so that's why it took me so long to figure it out because I was like using the excuse of, oh, no, I have to heal from this really toxic relationship. And then getting into another relationship that I was like, I don't actually want to be in this relationship. I did not want to date the guy. Was he a good guy? Sure. The only reason that we dated was because I kept getting pressure from all of the church moms at my church at the time that I was attending to be like, hey, you and this guy, you guys run in the same circles. You're around the same age. He's single. You're single. You guys should totally like do stuff.
They didn't mean it like that.
No, they didn't. But they were like, single person in their late 20s, also single person in their late 20s. They're one of the only people, like they're some of the only single people in our church that like, because I'm like, I'm not looking for, I don't want a relationship. I don't want to date men. And I was using that excuse of like, I don't want to date right now, but I like being single.
Yeah.
Great excuse because I'm like, I don't want to date men because I don't want to date men. Just, that's an easy that's like an easy thing. I just don't want to date men because I don't want to date men.
Oh my God. So I love thinking about like the little old ladies who like would agree with you and be like, yeah, no one likes men, but you know, you have to.
Yeah.
If you want to have a family, if you want to have, and then you're just like, lady, you're gay. Did you know that you're gay? Because some people really actually do want to date men.
Right. Yeah. Some people do.
Like some other men.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and also
some
women.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah. So that was very interesting. And then once I realized that, I was like, oh no, like not only do you not want to date men because you don't want to date men, but you don't want to date men because you are very gay. Like so gay. Like, oh my God, how did you not know you were gay? Gay. Yep. And like up until that point, I had only ever been with 2 guys. I still have only ever been with 2 guys. And I've only ever been with 1 woman. So my sexual history has been exactly, I can count them on one hand because it has been 3 people in total in my entire life.
Yeah. And you're also just talking about physical sex.
Correct.
I think, I actually think of sex more broadly. And it's interesting to hear your definition of sex being the way that you talked about it. Because we didn't say how do you define sex. We said, what is sex to you? Which could sound like a synonym when you say,
yes,
what is the definition of sex versus how do you they're not. It's not synonymous with each other. Hearing you talk about it as like kind of a concept and less of like physical, and then having you just right now reference to it as like a physical thing is interesting because we know it's almost like you're talking about 2 separate things, but we know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, for me, I think about the fact that like, well, how would I count my sexual encounters? Because physically, I also can only count on one hand. Yes, I believe that is correct. But when it comes to like sexual encounters, I have a bigger repertoire of that because I believe like that you can say a sexual encounter in reference to sexting, in reference to helping someone to get to an orgasm. There's a lot of sex that I have that isn't intercourse. So it's interesting to get into the weeds of that,
which is why we wanted to do this season.
So we can wait until next week to talk about sex when it comes to me, but I just want to make sure that we've covered all the ground with you, Kit. Thank you so much for sharing sexual history. That I think that's like, it's cool for me as your friend to like hear a little bit more about like your journey. And of course, offline, I'm gonna pry a little harder.
Yeah.
Because that's just best friends do.
Yes.
But is there anything else that like you think would be, helpful for the conversation and to our audience in terms of the conversation around sex? I'm sure that will come out in other conversations with other people as we talk.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, as of right now, the only other thing that I can think to add is so the question that we are basing the start of our conversations on for the entirety of season 7 is, what does sex mean to you? The bonus question that we have that if we don't get to isn't necessarily like a bad thing. But I kind of answered it as we went, which we tend to do. We tend to answer the bonus question as we're answering the first question, which is why I hardly ever get to legitimately ask it. But I'm kind of just going to ask it of myself right now.
Yeah.
Is how has my definition of sex changed as I have learned more? Like as I have evolved, as I have grown, as I have gone on this journey myself, like how has my definition of sex changed? And I kind of alluded to it and expanded on it a little bit as I've been talking about my journey. But like my definition of sex when I first started being queer was the physical act of getting naked and bringing someone to full orgasm. Like that would have been my definition, my textbook definition of sex.
Yeah.
Now that I have taken many years to unpack my own understanding of just who I am, I've had this wonderful opportunity to host this podcast. I've been able to have all of these different types of conversations, not necessarily about sex, but about just being queer in the world today. Me just doing my own research, listening to other people's lived experiences of being queer, listening to everyone's understanding of like how we got to where we are today with queer representation, with things like why sex is important, why it's not important in some people's instances. But like for me, now my definition of sex is whatever you want to define sex as. And for me, sex is still a very physical act, but it is also intimacy unpacked.
Mm-hmm.
Because sex itself is intimate. It is the highest form of intimacy that you can have with another person. Because when you get naked with someone else, you have nothing to hide behind. You don't have any clothes. You don't have any sort of anything covering you. You are standing there in your fullness.
Unless you're a weirdo like me and you like to wear your socks.
Okay, fine. Well, feet pics aren't free, man.
Jana loves to make fun of me for the fact that I wear my socks. Oh my god.
Feet pics aren't free. Just saying. Anyway.
You only get to see my feet sometimes when we have sex. Only sometimes.
Exactly. So, but to still be able to have that highest form of intimacy with someone, yes, it is very much so the ultimate act of intimacy with another person. But you can still have that type of intimacy with someone else in a very deep conversation. You can still have that type of intimacy with someone else when you're learning about something together. I mean, you might not be conversing about it, but you are legitimately intaking something that is incredibly, incredibly intimate. You can still have that type of intimacy. And so for me, sex is the ability to unpack intimacy in whatever way suits you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you're with the right person, you both intend to know when it is that you've had sex.
Yes.
And you don't say, but did we have intercourse? Did we? Did we put it in? Did we do this? Did we do that? It isn't about that. It's about, like you said, there's just a magic moment that happens, you know? And I think the lines get blurred when the good communication isn't happening.
Right.
You know? So, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you like how I did that?
You did my ending.
I did your ending.
I love this so much. I'm so very excited for the rest of this season, for the guests that we have coming on, and for the very wide plethora of just different lived experiences that we are going to be able to learn about from other people. I am very much so here for it. I'm really glad that we had this conversation, and we'll be able to have your conversation next, so that people get to hear your side, because then everyone understands where you and I are coming from as individuals. And so then as we kind of meet together at the T in the crossroads, and then we both go down the road together, it'll be a lot easier for both of us to kind of share that co-hosting hat that we can pass back and forth between each other. Because when you listen to the Dr. Jolie episode, you will not hear me talk hardly at all. And it had nothing to do with the fact that I was nervous or anything. I knew that it was going to be a conversation where I might not have had a ton to share, just because of the fact that it was legitimately in a, Dr. Jolie and both of you being part of the poly community, where I have absolutely no lived experience, and I can't talk to any experience because I've never done any of it. And so I would literally be talking out of my ass if I had really said anything.
And she was also referencing to things that I had never experienced in terms of performative sex in public, and kinky sex, certain types of kinky sex. And so
I mean, you're more kinky than I am, but
no, it's true. But I was just, there was things that I was learning as well, but at least things that I'm aware of and in community with people who are.
Right.
So
and
I
you're
have
also
a
lot more familiar with it than I was, where I'm like, I don't know what that means. So you're going to have to explain it to me, because I don't know. I could Google it real quick, but my search history would be very questionable after that.
And your ads would start changing. I'll tell you that. But yeah, speaking of ads, I am really excited we're gonna have video for this season. And I think it'd be good to tell people about what we're planning to do with Patreon. Even just a little bit. I know you probably heard about it a little bit in the intro, and maybe during a little ad break. But just like, what are you excited about when it comes to the Patreon?
I'm really excited to have people have a safe space where they can, like, and the thing is like, there are going to be things that we will only put behind a paywall. There are going to be conversations that we have that Jess and I will feel like, nope, the only way that you're going to be able to listen to this because of either the content or the context or the things that were shared, we want to protect that.
Whether it's for us or it's for our guests.
Right. We want to have that level of protection where it's like, if you want to hear this, there's going to be an exchange here, because of the fact that when you're talking about sex, when you're talking about things that are under the sex umbrella, and the thing is like, especially when you're talking about queer sex, we are going to be like, and this was something that I had I had talked to Jess about originally, where I was like, I don't want to just talk about sex, like people having sex, people doing sex. Like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to also be able to unpack the queer sex that is quote unquote taboo things and scenarios that people don't necessarily like to talk about because of the fact that they're still considered taboo. So talking about kinky spaces, talking about leather spaces, talking about play spaces, spaces where anonymity comes in with how you approach the situation. Because sometimes you go and have sex in a room with a glory hole and you don't know who's on the other side of it. Like, having those types of conversations, that will more than likely be behind a paywall, so that it's like, you can ask questions. That was also another reason why we wanted to have certain things behind a paywall, is because then we can have whoever's on our Patreon ask questions where we can then ask them of our guests to be like, hey, we told our patrons that we're going to be having you on. We told them a little bit about who you are and what you do. These are some of the questions that they had. Would you be cool taking 10, 15, 20 minutes to just answer them? And then we can put them behind the paywall and you can get a very in-depth understanding of either how they approach whatever it is that they do, or because of the fact that they are now basically an expert in their field because of their lived experience, they can share a lot more than Jess or I can because of the fact that we're not in those spaces.
Right. And in some cases, this is what they do for her career.
Right.
You know, Dr. Jolie, this is part of her work. Right. And so, like, it makes sense that it would be behind a paywall because there are aspects of what she might be answering that say, like, hey, even though she has a podcast herself and she's so open, there are aspects of her coaching, her counseling, the things that she teaches that take time and energy and effort and money that she's invested to, like, learn and to grow. And so sometimes that's going to be behind a paywall. Sometimes even our guests are going to be anonymous. Like, you might have a name for them, but you're not going to see their face. You're not going to know their legal name. Because of the nature of their experience in sexual encounters and how that could affect their professional career.
Right.
And so some of that ability to be vulnerable might be okay on the public podcast. We're okay with whatever stories people want to share publicly. But if there's something that someone goes, that's just you know what? I might want people to have to do a little bit harder digging to get to know the answer to this question. And so that's kind of why there's lots of reasons why we could want to put something behind the paywall for Patreon. I'm not a huge fan of paywalling anything.
Yeah, I mean, neither.
So you're getting a ton of, like, amazing, incredible content just from our podcast. But that's our reasoning. We wanted to give you a little bit of a understanding of that. I think the other thing that I'm just excited about is, our faces. I've been editing this podcast as a video this entire time.
Yes.
Like, So there are videos that we have from season 6, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
from season 5
Mm-hmm.
that I'll be uploading. You've seen like little clips of it on social media here and there, and you're going to see more. But those that takes a lot of effort. It takes time. It takes my time, and right now we're doing this from our hearts, right? And so like any little bit of financial support helps. And so we're probably going to put video as an option for our Patreon supporters. Now, you don't have to give much. So we really want you to go and check out our Patreon. What's our Patreon again?
It is queer consciousness. So it'll be patreon.com/queer consciousness.
Absolutely. Patreon.com/queer consciousness. Please go check it out. See what our packages are. They're so small. Like you can just to get the video if that's something you prefer. I personally am not a video podcast listener, watcher. But every now and then I'm like, I really want to see this. One of the people that I really enjoy the clips from and watching is Smosh. It's such a popular podcast, but there's something about the way they shoot it and the intimacy that and the way that they tell stories that I'm like, I actually want to see their faces. I want to see that how entertaining they are. And then a lot of them are just beautiful humans.
Yeah.
And we are beautiful humans.
This is
And
true.
so
We are.
if you have no idea what we look like, I understand why you might be curious, you know? And if you've
Also-
only seen one picture.
Also, I think it'll start to be able to have people understand that, like, even though we sound very similar, because we
Yeah.
do. I've gotten that so many times where people are like, "You
Have
and
you?
Jess sound so similar," and I'm like, "Really?"
I feel like we're into, like, I actually EQ us differently because we
Really?
sound so different. Like, but then
Okay.
again, I'm an audio engineer, so
Well, right, yeah, you can do that, but I have had people who like just listen to us and they're like, "Yeah, you and Jess sound real similar," and I'm like, "I don't think we do, but okay." So now you guys will be able to put names to
Interesting.
faces.
yeah, I'm gonna start asking people. That one of my favorite podcasts, they said that too. My Favorite Murder, I've mentioned it before. They in the beginning, they used to say that all the time because people would be like not sure who was speaking. And I think I had that for like maybe an episode, but after that, no problems
Yeah, no,
at all. And now I listen to them like, I don't even know how you could hear them as the same.
yeah,
But anyway, yeah, this was a great episode. I loved getting to know about you, Kit, in a way that even I, as your close friend, didn't know.
yeah.
And so I appreciate the vulnerability because I know you're so used to letting other people be vulnerable. It's a different element to let yourself be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to dive into my episode and share how I feel a little bit more about sex.
Yeah, let's do it. With the
Who's
shoulder
gonna
wiggle.
say it? Who's gonna say it? Are we gonna trade off now saying who's gonna say until next time?
I think you just did.
You don't want to say it too? All right,
Until
I'll say
next
it because
time.
I'm the one that interviewed you.
This is true.
Until next time.
Amazing. This podcast is hosted by me, Kit Sargent, co-hosted and produced by Jess Grace Garcia of Springward Productions, and the theme music is by Brian Smith of Holy Holy Music Productions. If you could do us a huge favor and please like, follow, comment, share, do all of the things on all of the socials. You can follow the podcast on Instagram @_queer.consciousness for all the latest episodes as well as any other exciting news. When you're listening on Spotify, please leave a 5-star rating and use the comment box for anything you'd like us to talk about. When you're listening to Apple Podcasts, please leave a comment and a 5-star rating. If you'd like to be on the podcast, send a message to queerconsciousnesspod@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/queerconsciousnesspodcast. We are trying to grow as organically as possible, and this helps other like-minded people who want to empower and encourage others on their journey. So until next time, remember to stand in your truth and know that you are worthy, just as you are.
We are the Deadly Faith Podcast, a show exploring where religion and crime collide. I'm Lacey.
And I'm Lola.
If you're interested in learning about cults, murderous ministers, and religiously charged crimes, look no further.
We invite you to journey with us into the dark church halls to find out what cults are hiding among us and which deranged church leaders are locked behind bars.
But we'll take a look at the religious factors that may or may not have contributed to their heinous crimes.
You can subscribe or follow the Deadly Faith Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Now back to the show.
Hey friend, just wanted to take a quick second to remind you that if you or someone you know is struggling and don't know where to turn, the trained volunteers at the LGBT National Hotline are here to help. Because sometimes the strongest thing to do is to ask for help. The National Hotline phone number is 888-843-4564. And if you want to check out the other things that they have available for them to help you with, you can check out the lgbthotline.org in order to be able to see all of the services that they offer in order to help our community.